Welcome back. In today's video, we are going to discuss about binding the modules. In the previous video, we discussed about the rebasing. Let's first understand what is the meaning of binding the symbols and why we need it. Binding symbol means calculating the new addresses for the symbols imported from DLL into process's virtual address space. And when this will be needed? This will be needed at the runtime when loader is trying to load your exe and DLLs and it is calculating the new preferred base address for your DLLs. Since DLLs contains the symbols like the variables and the function names that you have used in your DLL. So those addresses need to be recalculated. Calculating the new base addresses for the symbols and the variables is known as binding. This calculation is done after the calculation of the new preferred base address for the DLL by the loader. Please note that this binding is not performed by the rebase utility. In the previous video, we have seen about the rebase utility. Rebase utility only calculates the new preferred base address for the DLLs, but it does not calculate the new addresses for the symbols inside those DLLs, which will be exported. Rebase improves the performance as we have discussed in the previous video at the loading time of exe by calculating the new preferred base address for the DLLs beforehand. But rebase utility does not calculate the addresses of the symbols which will be exported by the DLLs. So, how we can improve that thing as well? How we can calculate this base addresses of the symbols and the functions and the variables which will be exported by the DLL beforehand? So the answer is bind utility. And using the bind utility, we can further improve the performance at the load time. So how does bind works? Bind works as follows. First of all, it opens the image of DLL after loading the module in virtual address space. It checks the preferred base address of the module under the header section. Based on the new preferred base address, it adds the offset value to the symbol used in the DLL, resulting into a new base address for the symbols. So basically, it is checking for the new base address where the DLL is going to be loaded in the virtual address space. And based on that, all the symbols also need to be having offsetted with respect to this new base address. And that is what this bind does. So now, all the symbols will have the new base addresses. What is the recommendation to use this bind utility? It should be used after rebasing. Rebasing will fix the value of the virtual address space where your DLL need to be loaded. That has been fixed. So now that calculation does not need to be done by the loader. Similarly, after the bind, you will not be able to allow the loader to recalculate the new addresses for the variables and the symbols which it is exporting. And that's how you will improve the performance at the load time, because you will remove this piece of work need to be done by loader. So the first recommendation is that you should be using this after the rebase. And you should not use it with the DLLs which have been shipped with the Microsoft OS, because Microsoft OS has already performed the rebasing and binding of the variables, or you can say the symbols exported by the DLLs. What is the command to use the bind utility? It has like bind, then the switches, and then all the image names, including the exe and all the dependent DLLs. This is how it can be used. Now, if you want to see all the options which I have taken from the Jeffery book, you can take the snapshot of this slide. These are the switches. Thank you.